we bring you the unvarnished truth of law enforcement. This broadcast features unfiltered, unedited, and completely raw footage. Join us as we step onto the front lines of justice, providing a transparent view of the critical moments that shape our society.
You can't just leave a child alone in a car like that.
Excuse me?
You left your baby in the car. I saw you. That's
child
illegal.
was choking. I'm a pediatric nurse. I just saved
I
her
don't
life.
care what you were doing. You can't leave a child unattended in a vehicle. I already called the police.
That was Amanda Sullivan calling 911 on Dr. Amber Williams in the parking lot of a Jewel Osco grocery store in Naperville, Illinois, on the evening of May 14th, 2025, at approximately 6:34 p.m. Amanda is what the internet calls a Karen, a term for white women who weaponize police and authority against black people doing absolutely nothing wrong. It's not her real name, but it's what she represents. A woman who sees a black mother and assumes criminal behavior, who calls 911 not because there's an emergency, but because she can. Amanda thought she'd caught a negligent mother abandoning her child in a locked car. What she'd actually done was call the police on a pediatric nurse who had just saved a 6-year-old girl from choking to death, while her own 3-year-old daughter sat safely buckled in her car seat, doors locked, windows cracked, for exactly 92 seconds. The emergency lasted less than 2 minutes. The fallout lasted 10 months. By the time Amanda realized her mistake, Amber had already been questioned by police in front of dozens of witnesses, investigated by Child Protective Services for 48 hours, and publicly humiliated in the parking lot where she'd been grocery shopping after a 12-hour shift, saving children's lives. The video went viral within 6 hours. The lawsuit was filed within 3 weeks. The settlement, $850,000, was finalized in December 2025. Amanda Sullivan was fired within 3 days, not because of immediate public outcry, but because her own company reviewed the footage and realized they'd employed someone willing to weaponize 911 against a black mother who was literally in the process of saving a child's life. This is the story of what happens when assumptions become accusations, when privilege becomes a weapon, and when a white woman decides a black mother must be doing something wrong, even when she's doing everything right. Dr. Amber Williams, 34 years old, pediatric nurse at Children's Memorial Hospital. 9 years of experience, certified in advanced pediatric life support. A woman trained to save children who made a split-second decision to save one child while her own child sat safely in a locked car. And it still wasn't enough. Before we continue, where are you watching from? This story starts in Illinois, but the pattern it reveals exists everywhere. If this kind of accountability matters to you, hit subscribe. We cover stories like this every week, and your support keeps these investigations coming. Now back to May 14th, 2025. Amber Williams didn't plan to become a pediatric nurse because of some inspiring childhood story. She became one because when she was 16, her younger brother nearly died from an asthma attack, and she watched the EMTs save his life in their living room while her mother sobbed. She decided then that she wanted to be the person who knew what to do when everyone else was panicking. The person who could look at a crisis and see steps instead of chaos. She went to nursing school at the University of Illinois, graduated with honors, and spent 2 years in general pediatrics before specializing in emergency pediatric care. By 34, she'd worked in the pediatric ER at Children's Memorial Hospital for 9 years. She'd seen kids come in blue from lack of oxygen, kids in anaphylactic shock, kids who'd swallowed batteries, inhaled food, stopped breathing for reasons no one understood yet. She'd saved more children than she could count, and she was really, really good at it. Her supervisor, Dr. Sarah Kim, would later testify in court that Amber was one of the most competent pediatric nurses she'd ever worked with. Calm under pressure, excellent clinical judgment, trusted by parents and doctors alike. Amber was also a single mother. Zoe was 3 years old, bright, curious, obsessed with Bluey, and asking why about everything. Amber's ex wasn't in the picture, hadn't been since Zoe was 6 months old. So it was just the two of them. Amber worked 3 12-hour shifts a week at the hospital, and on her days off, she was mom, chef, chauffeur, teacher, and everything else. She was tired most of the time, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. But she managed. She had routines, systems, backup plans. She'd learned how to function on 6 hours of sleep and cold coffee. On May 14th, 2025, Amber had just finished a 12-hour shift, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., It had been one of those days. Back-to-back patients, 2 codes, a toddler with a fever that wouldn't break, a teenager in diabetic ketoacidosis. She was exhausted. She picked up Zoe from daycare at 6:15 p.m., strapped her into the car seat, and headed to the grocery store because they were out of milk and Zoe wouldn't eat breakfast without it. She thought about just going home and dealing with it tomorrow, but tomorrow was another 12-hour shift and she wouldn't have time. So she pulled into the Jewel Osco parking lot at 6:28 p.m., found a spot near the entrance, put the car in park, turned off the engine. Zoe was already half asleep in her car seat, head tilted to the side, clutching her stuffed elephant. Amber reached for her purse, started gathering her reusable shopping bags from the passenger seat. She'd unbuckle Zoe, carry her inside. The girl was light enough. Grab milk and maybe some chicken nuggets and be home in 20 minutes. But before she could even unbuckle her own seatbelt, she heard screaming. Not regular kids screaming, not tantrum screaming. Panic screaming. Amber's head snapped toward the sound. 15 feet away, near another parked car, a woman was bent over a child who was on the ground. The child's face was turning blue. The mother was slapping her back and screaming for help. Amber didn't think. She just moved, grabbed her keys, hit the lock button on her key fob, cracked both back windows about 2 inches for air circulation, and ran toward the choking child. She didn't stop to think about Zoe because Zoe was safe. Car locked, windows cracked, mild spring evening, no danger. And there was a child dying 20 feet away. That's the decision Amber made. The one that Amanda Sullivan would later call child abandonment. The one that would nearly cost Amber custody of her daughter. Amber ran. The child's name was Lily Martinez. 6 years old. She'd been eating gummy candy in the back seat while her mother loaded groceries. One of the gummies went down wrong, lodged in her throat. She couldn't breathe, couldn't cough, couldn't make a sound. Her mother, Jessica Martinez, had pulled her out of the car and was trying to help, but panic makes you forget things. She was hitting Lily's back too high, too soft, not the right technique for a choking child. Lily's face was blue. Her lips were dark. Her eyes were starting to roll back. Amber got there in 4 seconds, dropped to her knees behind Lily, positioned her hands correctly, one fist just above the belly button, the other hand pressing into it. Pulled inward and upward in quick, firm thrusts. 1, 2, 3, nothing. 4, 5. The gummy flew out of Lily's mouth, landed on the pavement. Lily gasped, a huge, wet, desperate gasp. Then she started crying, which meant she was breathing, which meant she was alive. Amber kept one hand on Lily's back and looked up at Jessica. She's okay. She's breathing. You need to take her to the ER to make sure there's no damage to her airway. Jessica was sobbing, nodding, trying to say thank you. Amber checked Lily's pulse, looked at her color, pink returning to her face, and confirmed she was stable. The whole thing had taken 92 seconds from the moment Amber left her car to the moment Lily was breathing again. Amber stood up, exhaled. Her hands were shaking. Adrenaline does that. She'd done this before in the hospital. But in the hospital, you have equipment, backup, a team. In a parking lot, it's just you and your training. She turned to walk back to her car. That's when she saw Amanda Sullivan standing next to her driver's side door, phone raised, filming. Amber's first thought was that someone had filmed the rescue. That was fine. People film everything now. She kept walking toward her car. Amanda stepped in front of her. You can't just leave a child alone in a car like that. Amber stopped, blinked, looked at Amanda, then at her car. Zoe was still asleep in the back seat, exactly where Amber had left her, safe and sound. Excuse me? Amanda's voice was sharp, certain. You left your baby in the car. I saw you. That's illegal. Amber felt something cold settle in her chest. She pointed toward Jessica and Lily. That child was choking. I'm a pediatric nurse. I just saved her life. Amanda didn't even look. I don't care what you were doing. You can't leave a child unattended in a vehicle. I already called the police. Amber went still. You called the police? It wasn't a question. It was disbelief. This woman had watched Amber save a child's life and decided the problem was that Amber's own child had been alone in a locked car for 92 seconds. Amanda held up her phone. I have it all on video. You abandoned your baby. They're on their way. Jessica Martinez was still standing there with Lily in her arms. She'd heard everything. She walked over, Lily clinging to her neck. She didn't abandon anyone. She saved my daughter's life. I was here the whole time. I saw everything. Amanda looked at Jessica for the first time. Then she looked at Lily. Then she looked back at Amber. Her expression didn't change. That doesn't matter. The law is the law. And that's when Amber understood. This wasn't about the law. This wasn't about child safety. This was about a white woman seeing a black woman and assuming she was doing something wrong. Because if Amber had been white, Amanda would have seen a hero, a nurse who saved a child. But because Amber was black, Amanda saw a negligent mother who needed to be reported. Amber opened her car door, checked on Zoe, still asleep, perfectly fine. Car interior temperature was comfortable, windows cracked for airflow. No distress, no danger, exactly the way Amber had left her. She closed the door and turned back to Amanda. My daughter was never in danger. She was in a locked car with the windows cracked on a mild evening. I was 20 feet away, responding to a medical emergency. I'm a pediatric nurse. This is literally my job. Amanda crossed her arms. I've already reported you. If you leave before the police get here, that's going to look worse for you. Amber pulled out her phone and started recording. If we're doing this, we're both recording. What's your name? Amanda's face flushed. You don't need my name. Amber kept the camera steady. You called 911 on me for responding to a medical emergency. You're accusing me of child abandonment in front of witnesses. I'm going to need your name for when I file a complaint. That's when the patrol car pulled into the parking lot. Lights flashing. 2 officers. And that's when this went from humiliating to terrifying, because Amber had just finished a 12-hour shift, saving children's lives, and now she was about to be questioned by police for doing exactly that. Officers David Park and Rachel Bennett pulled into the parking lot at 6:41 p.m. They'd received a call about a child left unattended in a vehicle, possible neglect. When they arrived, they saw 3 women standing near a sedan, a small child visible in a car seat inside the vehicle, and about a dozen people in the parking lot watching. Park approached first. His body camera was on. He was professional, calm. Ma'am, we received a call about a child left in a vehicle. Can you tell me what's going on? Before Amber could answer, Amanda stepped forward. I called. She left her baby in the car and walked away. I watched her do it. Park looked at Amber. Is this your vehicle? Is that your child? Amber nodded. Yes. My daughter is 3 years old. She's asleep in her car seat. I had just parked when I heard someone screaming for help. A child was choking 20 feet away. I locked my doors, cracked the windows, and ran to help because I'm a pediatric nurse and that child was dying. She pointed to Jessica Martinez, who was still holding Lily. That's the mother. That's the child. Ask her. Park looked at Jessica. Can you confirm that? Jessica nodded, tears still on her face. My daughter was choking. I couldn't help her. This woman saved her life. She was only away from her car for like 2 minutes. I saw the whole thing. Park turned back to Amber. You're a nurse? Amber pulled out her hospital ID badge, still clipped to her scrubs. Pediatric nurse, Children's Memorial Hospital, 9 years. I'm certified in advanced pediatric life support. I performed the Heimlich maneuver. The child is stable now, but needs to be checked at an ER to make sure there's no airway damage. Park looked at the badge, then at Zoe in the car, then at Amanda. Ma'am, what exactly did you see? Amanda pointed at Amber. I saw her walk away from her car with her child inside. She left the child unattended. That's illegal. Park's expression didn't change. For how long? Amanda hesitated. I don't know exactly. A few minutes. Jessica spoke up. It was less than 2 minutes. I was here. I saw everything. Officer Bennett had been checking the car. She came back to Park. Vehicle is locked. Windows are cracked for ventilation. Child appears healthy and safe. Interior temperature is normal. No signs of distress. Park looked at Amber. Can you explain your decision-making process? Amber took a breath. I had just parked. I was about to unbuckle my daughter and take her inside with me when I heard someone screaming that their child was choking. I made a split-second decision. My daughter was safe in a locked car on a mild evening. The other child was dying. I chose to save the dying child. I was gone for 92 seconds. Park nodded slowly. And your daughter was never in danger? Amber met his eyes. No, officer. She wasn't. Amanda's voice rose. She still broke the law. You can't leave a child alone in a vehicle in Illinois. Park turned to her. Ma'am, the law prohibits leaving a child unattended in a manner that creates an unreasonable risk. In this case, the child was in a locked vehicle for less than 2 minutes while her mother, a trained medical professional, responded to a life-threatening emergency 20 feet away. No prosecutor would file charges on this. Amanda's face flushed red. So you're not going to do anything? She abandoned her child. Bennett stepped forward. Ma'am, she saved a child's life. Her own child was never in danger. We're not filing a report. Amanda pulled out her phone. I have video. I'm going to send this to Child Protective Services myself. Park's tone changed slightly. Ma'am, filing a false report to CPS is a crime. Based on what we've seen here, there's no evidence of neglect or endangerment. If you file a report knowing there's no basis for it, you could face charges yourself. Amanda stared at him, then at Amber, then at the crowd of people watching. She didn't say anything else, just turned and walked toward her own car. But she didn't delete the video, and 3 hours later, she posted it to her neighborhood Facebook group with the caption, Woman abandons baby in parking lot. Police did nothing. By morning, it had been shared 600 times. Someone downloaded it and posted it to Twitter. With context, Jessica Martinez had posted her own video of the rescue, explaining what actually happened. The two videos together went viral, and by then, Amanda Sullivan's face, name, and employer were public knowledge. Amanda Sullivan's Facebook post went up at 9:47 p.m. on May 14th. Her account wasn't private. Her post was public, and she tagged it with the name of her suburb and several local parent groups. The video showed Amber walking away from her car. It showed Zoe in the back seat. It showed Amber crouched over Lily, but Amanda had filmed from an angle where you couldn't really see what Amber was doing. It just looked like she was standing near another car while her own daughter sat alone. Amanda's caption read, This woman left her baby locked in a car tonight at Jewel Osco while she walked away. Police showed up and did nothing. This is why kids die in hot cars. If you see her, report her to CPS. She should not have custody of that child. Within 2 hours, the post had been shared 200 times. People were commenting, most of them angry, some calling for Amber to be arrested, some demanding CPS investigate, some sharing the post to other groups. But then someone who'd been in the parking lot saw the post and commented, I was there. This woman is a nurse. She was saving a choking child. Amanda, you are lying. And then Jessica Martinez found the post. She responded with her own video, the one she'd filmed on her phone. It showed Amber performing the Heimlich on Lily. It showed the moment Lily started breathing again. It showed Amber checking her vitals. And it showed Amanda standing by Amber's car, phone raised, filming. Jessica's post said, This woman saved my daughter's life. She's a pediatric nurse. She responded to a medical emergency while her own child sat safely in a locked car for less than 2 minutes. Amanda Sullivan is trying to ruin her life for being a hero. And that's when the narrative flipped. By 2 a.m., both videos were on Twitter. By 7 a.m., they were on Reddit. By noon the next day, they'd been viewed over 5 million times. And Amanda Sullivan's name was everywhere. People found her LinkedIn. She worked as an HR manager at a tech company in downtown Chicago. People started calling the company, emailing, demanding she be fired. The company issued a statement on May 16th. We are aware of a video circulating involving an employee. We are investigating the matter and take all allegations seriously. Amanda was placed on administrative leave that same day. But here's what was happening behind the scenes, the part that Amber wouldn't find out about until later. Amanda had actually followed through on her threat. She'd filed a report with Illinois CPS claiming Amber had abandoned her child in a vehicle. CPS is required to investigate all reports, even false ones, even ones filed by people with obvious bias. On May 16th, a caseworker showed up at Amber's apartment, knocked on the door at 8:30 a.m. Amber had just gotten Zoe dressed for daycare and was making breakfast. The caseworker identified herself, said there had been a report filed alleging child neglect, said she needed to interview Amber and do a home inspection. Amber felt her stomach drop. She let the woman in, showed her the apartment, answered questions about Zoe's routine, her childcare, her work schedule. The caseworker asked about the incident at the grocery store. Amber explained everything: the choking child, the locked car, the 92 seconds. She showed the caseworker her hospital ID, her certifications, the video Jessica had posted. The caseworker took notes, said the investigation would take a few days, said Amber shouldn't worry, but also shouldn't leave the state without notification. Amber sat on her couch after the caseworker left and cried, because for 48 hours she had to live with the possibility that someone might decide she was an unfit mother, that Zoe might be taken from her because she'd saved a child's life. The CPS investigation closed on May 18th, finding unfounded, no evidence of neglect or endangerment, case closed. But those 48 hours changed something in Amber. She'd spent 9 years saving children, and in one 92-second decision, she'd been investigated as if she were a danger to her own daughter. She decided she wasn't letting it go. Amanda Sullivan was fired on May 17th, 3 days after the video went viral. Her termination letter, which was later obtained through discovery in Amber's lawsuit, cited conduct inconsistent with company values and damage to the company's reputation. But the firing wasn't the end of Amanda's problems. It was the beginning. On May 20th, Amber hired Marcus Reed, a civil rights attorney who'd spent 20 years handling false accusation cases. Reed took Amber's case pro bono after watching the video and reading about the CPS investigation. He told Amber this wasn't just about her. It was about a pattern. White women weaponizing police and CPS against black mothers, using the system as a tool to punish black women for existing. Reed filed a lawsuit in June 2025. The complaint named Amanda Sullivan personally for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and filing a false CPS report. The damages requested $850,000. Amanda's attorney tried to argue she'd been acting out of concern for her child's welfare, that she genuinely believed she was witnessing neglect. Reed destroyed that argument in 3 ways. First, he showed Amanda's own video. The timestamp showed she'd started filming before Amber even reached the choking child, meaning Amanda had seen Amber run toward the emergency and decided to film her car instead of filming the actual rescue. Second, he showed text messages Amanda had sent to friends that night. Messages where she'd written things like, "I knew something was off about her, and you can't trust people like that with kids." Messages that made it very clear Amanda's assumptions weren't about child safety. They were about race. Third, he brought in a data analyst who'd studied Illinois CPS reports. The analyst testified that black mothers are reported to CPS at 3 times the rate of white mothers for the same behaviors. That white mothers leaving children briefly in cars to respond to emergencies are rarely reported, while black mothers doing the same thing are routinely investigated. The case never went to trial. Amanda's homeowner's insurance company settled in December 2025 for $850,000. The settlement included a requirement that Amanda complete 120 hours of racial bias training and community service at a children's hospital. But here's what the settlement couldn't capture: the damage Amanda had done. Amber spent 48 hours wondering if she'd lose custody of her daughter. She spent weeks being recognized in public as the woman who abandoned her baby, because Amanda's video had spread further than Jessica's clarification. She had parents at Zoe's daycare ask her if it was true, if she'd really left Zoe alone. She had to explain to her supervisor at the hospital why CPS had called asking about her employment. She had to tell Zoe, as best she could explain to a 3-year-old, why a stranger had been asking questions about their family. And she had to live with the knowledge that if she'd been white, none of it would have happened. Amanda would have seen a hero, not a threat. The settlement money didn't fix that, but Amber used it to try to prevent it from happening to someone else. Amber Williams took the settlement money and split it into pieces with purpose. $200,000 went into a trust fund for Zoe, college, or whatever she needed when she was old enough to decide. $100,000 went to Jessica Martinez to help cover Lily's medical bills and therapy. Lily had been traumatized by the choking incident and needed counseling. $50,000 went to legal aid organizations that provide free representation to mothers dealing with false CPS reports. Because Amber had learned during her lawsuit just how many black mothers face exactly what she'd faced. Investigations triggered by bias, not evidence. And $300,000 went into starting the Amber Williams Foundation for Pediatric Emergency Response Training, a nonprofit that provides free CPR and choking response training to parents, teachers, and community members in underserved neighborhoods. Because Amber had realized something during those 92 seconds in the parking lot. Most people don't know what to do when a child is choking. Jessica had been slapping Lily's back wrong. If Amber hadn't been there, Lily might have died, while her mother tried desperately to help but didn't have the right training. The foundation launched in September 2025. In its first 6 months, it trained over 2,000 people in life-saving pediatric emergency response. It's free, it's accessible, and it's named after a woman who saved a child's life and got reported to CPS for it. Amanda Sullivan filed for bankruptcy in August 2025. Her homeowner's insurance had covered the settlement, but her legal fees weren't covered. She'd spent over $100,000 defending the lawsuit. Her career in HR was over. No company would hire her after the video. Her name was permanently linked to the incident. She completed her community service requirement at Rush University Medical Center's pediatric unit. Amber heard about it later and thought it was fitting. Amanda spent 120 hours watching nurses save children's lives. Maybe she learned something. Jessica Martinez and Amber became friends. Jessica brings Lily to the foundation's training session sometimes, and Lily tells people about the nice nurse who saved her. She doesn't remember being scared. She just remembers Amber's voice telling her she was going to be okay. Officer David Park testified at a police training seminar about the incident. He used it as an example of how to assess a situation instead of just reacting to a report. How to recognize when someone calling 911 might have bias. How to verify facts before making assumptions. His testimony was recorded and is now used in training programs across Illinois. Amber still works at Children's Memorial Hospital. Still saves kids' lives 3 days a week. Still comes home exhausted. But now, when she walks through the hospital, parents recognize her. Not as the woman who abandoned her baby, as the woman who saved a choking child and built something good from the aftermath. Zoe is 4 now. She doesn't really remember that night in the parking lot. She knows her mom is a nurse who helps sick kids. She knows her mom is strong. And when she's older, Amber will tell her the whole story. About 92 seconds that changed everything. About how doing the right thing sometimes means being punished for it. About how her mother didn't let that punishment be the end of the story. The video is still online. Both versions. Amanda's, which tries to make Amber look negligent, and Jessica's, which shows the truth. Combined, they've been viewed over 35 million times. And every time someone watches them, they're seeing a question. What would you have done? If you saw a child choking and your own child was safe in your car, would you run to help? And if you did, would you expect to be called a hero or a criminal? For Amber, the answer was obvious. You save the child. You deal with the consequences later, because that's what you do when you're trained to save lives. Amanda saw a black woman making a decision and assumed it was the wrong one. She didn't ask questions, didn't look for context, just called 911 and started filming. And that assumption cost her everything. But here's what should bother you. What should keep you up at night thinking about this story? Amanda isn't special. She's not uniquely terrible. She's just one white woman who did what the system has trained white women to do for generations, use authority to police black mothers. CP East reports, 911 calls, complaints to store managers, school principals, apartment managers, white women weaponizing institutions against black women and calling it concern. Amber won because she had power. She's a nurse with credentials. She had witnesses. She had video evidence. She had a lawyer who'd take her case pro bono. But what about the mothers who don't have that? The mothers who get reported, investigated, and can't prove they were doing everything right? The mothers who lose custody not because they're negligent, but because someone like Amanda decided they looked like they must be doing something wrong? Those mothers don't get settlements, don't get foundations named after them, don't get justice. And that's the real story here. Not that Amber won, but that winning required her to be a nurse, to have witnesses, to have video, to have a viral moment that forced accountability. Justice shouldn't require going viral. But until the system changes, until white women stop weaponizing 911 against black mothers, until CPS stops investigating bias instead of neglect. It does. If this story hit you, here's what you need to think about. Would Amanda have called 911 if Amber had been white? Would she have seen a white nurse responding to an emergency and assumed heroism instead of neglect? Would CPS have investigated a white mother for leaving her child in a car for 92 seconds while saving another child's life? Or would they have recognized it for what it was? A trained medical professional making a split-second triage decision? Because here's the data. Black mothers are reported to CPS at 3 times the rate of white mothers for the same behaviors. Black mothers are investigated more frequently, face harsher scrutiny, and lose custody more often. Not because they're worse parents, but because the system sees them as threats instead of caregivers. That's not an accident. That's not coincidence. That's systemic racism in action, and it only changes when we force accountability, when we make Amanda Sullivan's face consequences, when we make sure that weaponizing 911 against black mothers costs something. Drop a comment below. Have you or someone you know ever been falsely reported or accused based on bias? What would you have done in Amber's position? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this is a channel that tells stories that need to be told, stories that expose injustice, hold power accountable, and remind us that sometimes the camera catches everything. Don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.
Seeking the truth is our ultimate mission. We dig deep to hold power to account, relying entirely on facts and data. Remember, the records never lie. Thank you for tuning in and supporting our work.